as the WWF continued to push the envelope to new heights, leading to Vince McMahon shooting back at the growing focus of the media on the TV product due to the younger demographics' viewership skyrocketing on Raw. WCW were forced to not only not attempt to match it, but tone down further due to Turner's standards and practices restrictions, with Eric Bischoff as the company president distancing WCW from the WWF product in several media interviews during the week, with one of the topics coming up being Scott Steiner's character and promos. Steiner, who became one of the top rating draws in the business over the last 6 months with a mixture of aggressively comedic edgy promos, was asked by Eric to tone down his act and drop some of the catchphrases he got over in the last few months. Steiner with Bagwell opened the show for his first promo since the Eric story, noticeably dropping some of his usual references and crowd interaction, with him and Bagwell challenging Goldberg and Rick Steiner to set up a tag main event for later tonight. Nitro's rest of the first hour saw Luger and Nash calling Mysterio on the phone to offer him a place in the group and a Wolfpack shirt, a Kidman vs. Psychosis match going 13 minutes, and Arn Anderson confronting David Flair about him turning on Rick to join the NWO, as David told him that the Horsemen are the past, with Anderson warning him that when he walks out the door David is now another NWO member. While the WWF is on the hottest run of any company in history, WCW continued to do peak business in every department after news came out of the Super Brawl pay-per-view drawing the company's third biggest show in history, while also having a huge week on the road with 2 house shows headlined by Goldberg vs. Bigelow in San Antonio and Greenville drawing a combined attendance of over 30,000 people. After feuding with the Wolfpack in the last month and getting the highest profile win of his career last week against Nash, Mysterio, after taking off his mask, continued to be placed in the main TV time slots, with Ray vs. Bigelow crossing over the top of the hour to the first head-to-head quarter, going 9 minutes, with Ray going over to continue his streak. The full corporation opened Raw, coming after a week of Vince McMahon all over the media talking about the booming WWF product and whether the company market to children, as with the WWF pushing the creative envelope further than any company at any point in history. Raw's viewership shot up in every demographic, including over 2 million viewers under 18. Vince talked about Undertaker's message from last week before blaming Kane for losing, kicking him out of the corporation and about to send him back to the asylum before Chyna asked to give him one more chance, setting up a Kane vs. Austin main event with both Kane and Chyna fired if Kane doesn't win, along with a Taker vs. Mankind match, as Raw opened huge with an all-time record 6.4 rating, by far the highest opener in history. McMahon's most talked about appearance came on a high-profile piece on Inside Edition, aggressively going face-to-face with the interviewer and confronting him on every point made regarding how they market the product to every demographic. While knowing that the show was gonna try to push their agenda, McMahon brought his own crew to get the full transcript of the interview, where Vince goes after him even more about the show not doing their homework and trying to mask the facts with their editing. McMahon then sent a letter to the New York Daily News calling the critics geeks with no sense of humor, saying that 70% of their audience is over 18 years old and the only focus group they take seriously are the audience that made them #1 in the TV charts and pack the buildings for WWF shows every week. Next on Nitro was Ernest Miller being called out by Jerry Flynn, going 8 minutes, while Raw had a three-way match for the IC title between Shamrock Val and Goldust, continuing the Triangle program heading into WrestleMania with Billy Gunn out of the match after not being cleared to wrestle, going 4 minutes before interfering for the finish, as the announcers continued to hype a loaded-up second hour with 3 major matches of Rock vs. Road Dogg for the title, Taker vs. Mankind, and Austin vs. Kane coming up. With the company hyping his return prior to the show, Jim Ross, who for the last few months was backstage helping Michael Cole do play-by-play through the headset, made his TV return to a big ovation. JR, who still didn't fully recover from Bell's palsy, called out Bart Gunn before changing his tone, saying that a lot of people seem to have trouble looking at his face these days, and that the company promised him to get his job back when he's ready, which didn't happen because they didn't want his face on television. JR then brought up Bart Gunn's talked about Brawl for All fight with Steve Williams, playing off the legit story in the company being that everyone wanted Gunn to win just because JR was so arrogantly predicting Williams to run through the tournament. JR said that it was a lucky punch before slapping Gunn to turn heel and bring out Williams for the save, with this segment bumping Raw back into record territory with over 400,000 viewers to a 6.4. Next on Nitro was Bret Hart vs. Chris Benoit, a match announced on the spot during the second hour, going way longer than usual with close to 20 minutes in a rare TV match going into a commercial break over 2 quarters. Raw meanwhile continued to break new milestones, having DX vs. Owen and Jarrett going 5 minutes for the tag belts with the hook of Deborah in a robe at ringside. Minutes later, Luno came out to call out Sable, who went to the next level as a TV draw since coming back from the Playboy Media Tour, leading to Raw breaking its all-time quarter-hour record with a 6.6 rating. The second half of Bret vs. Benoit continued into the top of the hour quarter, giving Nitro its first viewership boost of the night, picking up over 500,000 viewers into the 4 rating range. Rock vs. Road Dogg for the title opened Raw's second hour, going 4 minutes with Rock going over to retain 4 weeks from WrestleMania. Raw, coming from the Gund Arena in Cleveland, sold out the building with over 17,000 people, while Nitro, coming from the Dean Dome in Chapel Hill, drew a sellout 19,000, combining for a huge audience in the buildings and on TV. With another booming department in pay-per-view buys seeing one of its biggest head-to-head battles in history between the companies in February 1999, as preliminary numbers for both the Valentine's Day Massacre pay-per-view headlined by the first Austin vs. McMahon match and Rock vs. Mankind for the WWF title, and WCW's Super Brawl headlined by Hogan vs. Flair, in addition to a loaded Star Power card, came out with both events neck and neck, each drawing around 450,000 domestic buys, making it one of the biggest ever months for the industry on pay-per-view, with both companies since the start of '99 already drawing over 2 million domestic buys. The Wolfpack with Hollywood Hogan came out for his first follow-up promo after going over Ric Flair with David's interference and him joining the NWO as Super Brawl, putting over David for making the right decision while taking shots at Flair, telling him to do the right thing and announce his retirement tonight. The Wolfpack Hogan promo segment, which included Vincent and Stevie Ray fighting after Nash and Hogan played them against each other, drew WCW's peak rating of the night with a 4.3 rating. Raw had multiple angles in the next 15 minutes, first with Public Enemy calling out the Brood, Andrade vs Blackman in a kendo stick match, while in the background throughout Bob Holly, Road Dogg and Al Snow, who took the hardcore division to the next level in the last 2 months with some of the wildest matches in history, brawled all over the building until ending up in the street. After heavily hyping his promo throughout the show as him perhaps announcing his retirement, Ric Flair came out just before the main event talking about David turning heel on him to join the NWO before turning to Hogan. Flair said that he's still the president of WCW for 28 more days, looking 2 weeks ahead to the uncensored pay-per-view, saying that he's having a 15-feet-high cage built for the show with no doors surrounded with barbed wire at the top, while subtly promoting a violent match with him and Hogan going old school with only one walking out. While the Flair promo was going on, Vince McMahon came out on Raw for commentary on the Taker vs. Mankind match, with Foley's spot as the second referee for the main event on the line, announcing Taker vs. Bossman in a Hell in a Cell match for WrestleMania before hinting at another major announcement to be revealed later in the show. While usually a hype trick, Flair promo is one of the biggest guarantees in the business for a viewership spike, a rare occurrence on the night, going head-to-head with the McMahon-Mankind Taker match on Raw, saw WCW drop to a 3.8 rating, while at the same time Raw jumped over 900,000 viewers from a 5.7 to 6.4. Nitro's final quarter saw the entrances and first half of the Goldberg and Rick vs. Scott and Bagwell main event, with Bagwell making his in-ring return for the first time in almost a year since his near-career-ending injury from a Rick Steiner top rope bulldog last April, while Rick himself was making his return from injury after months out. The tag match went 11 minutes with the crowd, as it did last week, popping huge for Goldberg vs. Steiner, including a memorable spot with Goldberg press slamming the over 280-pound Steiner for reps to a massive reaction. After arriving an hour and a half earlier, Steve Austin made his first appearances on the night, with him and Kane coming out at 10:50 p.m. for the main event. Austin, who was on a media run over the last month with a more sporadic WWF TV schedule, worked his first TV match on a Monday night in almost 4 months since the start of December '98, going 14 minutes against Kane in the same building of their title match in June of last year. After Rock's appearance on That 70s Show sitcom drew the show's all-time record rating, Austin also had his first major acting role debuting during the weekend TV series Nash Bridges for a heavily hyped guest appearance on Friday, spiking viewership big, with the episode drawing a 9.9 rating with almost 15 million viewers, with both figures all-time records for the show. Goldberg and Rick vs. Scott and Bagwell continued in the overrun against record viewership on Raw, still managed to increase its audience, jumping to a 4 rating for the conclusion of the match, ending up with Rick setting up the hot tag with Goldberg dominating to go over to close the show. At the same time, Austin vs. Kane picked up big from already near record numbers, jumping over 1.3 million viewers to a massive 7.6 rating, the highest peak recorded on a Raw broadcast in history. Raw, who exactly a year ago drew a 3.8 rating, continued its unprecedented explosion with the show almost doubling its audience in 12 months, shattering every opposed and unopposed record in cable TV history with a huge 6.3 rating. With the rating gap between the shows reaching all-time highs in the last week, WCW experimented on March 8 with a never-seen-before TV concept to start the show in the unopposed hour, not going to the crowd in the arena to save it to the head-to-head period when Raw goes on the air, with the show starting with the recap of Ric Flair and Arn Anderson's discussion from Thunder planting the first seeds for the Flair heel turn, with Rick glossing over his son turning on him to fully focus on winning the world title again. While Hogan responded in a worked shoot promo on Flair, bringing up him holding young talent down to keep his spot, saying that seeing Flair prioritizing the belt over his family lit a fire under him that he didn't have in years, planting the seeds for the Hogan babyface turn, with him working a more aggressive style than usual in their last match. The rest of the first hour saw several more Hogan and Nash skits, first with them watching and mocking Flair's promo from last Monday, and Steiner and Bagwell continuing the road to spring break with them pulled over on the road and being cops for the day. Hogan and Nash, who in the last month officially became the two most powerful people in the company along with Eric Bischoff, had a free reign in the last week, with the burned-out Eric taking a vacation in France, went to a shooting range to meet Torrie Wilson and set up Plan B to get Rick after he no-sold the David turn, with the unique hour of television consisting only of skits, recaps and video packages while several dark matches were going on in the building, maintained around the same rating it did in the last month, drawing a 5 rating, with WCW officially kicking off the show at 8:55 and going to the crowd in the building for the first time a minute from the top of the hour at 8:59. Nitro opened the show with Gene in the ring for a scheduled Goldberg promo and David Flair coming out instead, saying that he's not dragging his issue with Rick anymore and he's not leaving the ring until he comes out to confront him. Goldberg was out moments later, with WCW taking a commercial break at an unusual time a few minutes into the hour, with the cliffhanger of Goldberg on the way to the ring. Goldberg said that out of respect for his family he's not gonna take care of the situation as he normally would, before almost taking David out just as Rick entered the building, sprinting to the ring with Goldberg and Flair going face-to-face for the first time. Flair, now almost in full heel mode, turned some of the crowd when going against Goldberg, saying that he's the most powerful man in the business and the greatest of all time, as Goldberg responded that Flair not only lost his family but now also lost his mind, ending up with Flair challenging Goldberg for tonight to set up a huge main event with the first ever match between them, with the show again going to a second commercial break in 7 minutes, which heard the number of the quarter starting with a 3.9 rating. With the company hotter than ever after both Raw and Heat broke new viewership milestones in the last week, entering the 6 and 5 rating range for the first time, Rock opened Raw to continue the main storyline heading into WrestleMania, with him taking a stunner last night to add to the suspicious incidents involving White and Austin. Rock immediately called out Paul White, with Vince McMahon coming out moments later for the Rock-Vince confrontation hyped since last night, telling Rock that he needs to stop washing corporate laundry in public, promising to lay out all the answers for Rock in time, and that White is a first-class member of the corporation. Rock responded telling Vince that he trusts him for now, but there are too many coincidences for him to accept, bringing up all the examples of White double-crossing them to bring him out to the ring. White said that Rock was the one who instructed him to wait for Austin on the stage and that Vince hired him to protect the title from Austin, saying that he might give McMahon his money back and take out Rock instead, ending with Mankind and Austin out and Vince booking the main event for tonight as Austin vs. Foley with White as the special referee, with Raw again opening huge with a record 6.4 rating. Nitro jumped big in the second quarter, picking up over 700,000 viewers to a 4.5 rating for a Raven vs. Hack match that turned into an 8-minute three-way hardcore brawl in the backstage area with Bigelow, Raven and Hack in the role of the Wild Holly Snow and Road Dogg. Hardcore matches on WWF TV over the last 3 months, with Raw having a D'Lo Brown vs. Owen Hart street fight going 5 minutes, while setting up 2 angles for later with the Ministry looking for Bossman backstage, and Mankind asking Austin to lay down for him during their match so he can be the second referee to counter White at WrestleMania. Austin and Mankind also teamed up on the road with the WWF, continuing its best house show month in history, with another 2 huge sold-out crowds in Chicago and Milwaukee during the week, combining for over 35,000 people for shows headlined by Rock and Kane vs. Austin and Mankind tag matches. With both going for singles feuds over the last few months, Raw hyped the reunion of the Outlaws in a tag match for the night, with the crowd popping big for their pre-match introduction, going 2 minutes against Al Snow and Bob Holly before Taker and the Ministry came out to take them out as a message to Bossman, with Taker promising that before the night is over they will come face to face. Following that, Raw had one of the most talked about angles of the night, with Jim Ross coming to the ring to call out Michael Cole. JR brought out a bag with the costume designed for Steve Williams, shooting on the company creative and marketing for making a decorated athlete like Williams wear that gimmick to the ring. JR then went to Cole saying that nobody helped Cole more than him to get him ready for television, but then Cole turned on him by going to the office to tell them that Ross can't be back with his current condition, ending up with him kicking Cole and telling him to drag himself to the back while he takes back his commentary spot, with the quarter jumping big to a huge 7 rating, the first time ever a Raw broadcast recorded a 7 rating for a full quarter hour, and only the second quarter ever in general to reach the 7 range, making it the second highest rated quarter in history, only behind the 7.2 rating for the Goldberg vs. Page match on October 26, '98. The JR angle continuing to do strong numbers will lead to him being involved in more TV storylines for years to come, as besides Vince's amusement of constantly ribbing him on TV, JR will develop a pattern as a proven viewership mover going forward. After dropping some of the more edgy references in his promo last week after Bischoff went on a radio interview to publicly tell him to tone down due to Turner's restrictions, Scott Steiner returned this week and went through every line with Eric out of sight on a vacation in Europe. Steiner vs. Booker went 14 minutes, and after the huge gap in the previous quarter, bumped Nitro around 1 million viewers from a 3.6 to 4.4 rating in a direct turnover from Raw. The JR angle continued with Vince McMahon sending Terry Taylor to get JR out of the commentary table and take his spot, leading to JR mocking his Red Rooster gimmick and calling him a mid-card wrestler, telling McMahon how ridiculous it is that he sent the Red Rooster to take over his job. Ross addressed his angle on the WWF website leading to Monday Night, saying that he should have been back at his chair by the Rumble pay-per-view when a day earlier the Alphas told him that he's not ready yet, saying that viewers are gonna see a never-seen-before side of JR and he hopes to be back by WrestleMania in 3 weeks. With WCW having an unusual top-of-the-hour segment filled with recaps and commercial breaks, Raw jumped over 500,000 viewers to a 6.7 rating for X-Pac vs. Test, going 4 minutes with Chyna and Triple H at ringside, ending up with Test going over after Shane's interference and Chyna laying out Hunter to lead to him challenging her to come back to the ring or he will find her backstage, along with Patterson and Briscoe continuing to search for the Ministry backstage until instead entering Godfather's locker room. The final wrestling pay-per-view before WrestleMania will take place on Sunday, with WCW having Uncensored headlined by a Hogan vs. Flair barbed wire cage match hyped by Flair to be an old-school violent match, with the company as a result of the growing Turner restrictions just as the WWF are turning up the volume to the max, unable to promote the full match stipulation of it being a first blood match, instead directing viewers to the company website to find out. WCW will also get a massive boost of fresh star power in the next few weeks, with Randy Savage and Sting about to come back from long-term injuries, with Sting already returning to the ring during the week in a series of matches against Bret Hart. Nitro jumped back into the 4 rating range, picking up over 600,000 viewers for Mysterio vs. Scott Norton, while Raw had another Ministry attack in the build to the upcoming Taker-Bossman confrontation, along with Chyna returning to the ring challenging Triple H to come out, ending up with Kane interfering to accidentally shoot a fireball on Chyna's face. Bret Hart vs. Van Hammer was next in an unadvertised match going 11 minutes, while the WWF ran away with a gap near record territory. Sable came out bringing Jerry Lawler a copy of her Playboy magazine which debuted on the day, hyped to be a contender for the highest selling of all time, with Sable heavily promoting it on a media tour over the last month, which as a result boosted her star power significantly to the TV audience, with every appearance since returning spiking numbers. With King comically reading the magazine with Sable on commentary while Luna vs. Tori was going on, followed by Taker and the Ministry waiting for Bossman in the parking lot and dragging him to a symbol to end with a Ministry Corporation brawl and Taker arrested, Raw shot back up into the 7 rating range, jumping over 900,000 viewers, while Nitro with a Cold Bret vs. Hammer match dropped to a 3.5, making the gap of 3.5 rating points the second largest in Monday Night Wars history, only behind the 3.9 rating gap for the Goldberg-Page match. Hogan and Nash made their first appearance in front of the crowd just before the main event doing commentary for the match, making several inside references, including Nash saying that they stretched the truth regarding Flair in the last few weeks and he no-sold it. Flair and Goldberg came out moments later for the match, hyped as one of the biggest in show history, with the top 2 babyfaces in the company against each other. The entrances and first half of the Goldberg-Flair match, which came minutes after a near-record gap between the shows with Nitro being doubled in viewership, saw WCW picking up huge, going from the biggest gap of the night to by far the closest in a matter of minutes, jumping over 1.3 million viewers to a 4.6 rating in a direct turnover from Raw, which dropped almost the same amount at the same time. Rock, Mankind, White and Austin made their entrances at 10:50 p.m. going against the big main event on TNT, with the Austin vs. Mankind match given away on TV after at one point during parts of January and February the talk was to save it for WrestleMania, with the winner facing Rock in the main event on the same night. Austin and Foley went 9 minutes with Rock on commentary running them down throughout and testing White's connection to Austin during the match, with Raw's final quarter, which included Vince confronting Undertaker in the parking lot while he was being arrested, dropped to a shallow 6 rating, in large part because of the massive first-time ever main event WCW gave away to go up against it, closing the hour with the closest margin of the night with a 6 to 4.6 rating. Goldberg vs. Flair continued to pick up huge in the overrun, going 9 minutes with the second half of the match jumping to a peak 5.7 rating, with the match in total gaining over 2.3 million viewers to bring WCW neck and neck with Raw after a 2-1 gap just 20 minutes earlier. Goldberg dominated until Flair, who worked as a full heel, got some cheap shots to take the advantage, with Goldberg looking to have the match won until the NWO including Hogan and Nash ran to the ring to beat down both to close the show, with Nitro going off the air a minute before Raw at 11:04 p.m., meaning that during the head-to-head 4 minutes Goldberg vs. Flair might have outdrawn Raw at the same time. Austin vs. Mankind with the final minute unopposed rebounded to a 6.1 rating, with the finish continuing to build the tension in the corporation, with White giving Mankind the win to make him the second referee at the WrestleMania main event and then not going after Austin post-match, setting Rock off to close a record-breaking show for the company, with Raw continuing to push the ceiling up, managing to build on last week's milestone with an all-time record 6.5 rating, the highest-rated show in cable TV history. After teasing it in the last few weeks, WCW changed the entire direction of the main storyline in the company built since January 4th, with Ric Flair going heel after buying off referee Charles Robinson to win the title for the 14th time, and Hulk Hogan going babyface after hulking up to a big reaction for the first time in years and having the match won several times before the finish at the uncensored pay-per-view. Unlike last Monday when WCW experimented with the show format to counter Raw at 9 p.m., this week the concept was slightly changed, with the show going to the arena for several matches, but still with the idea that Nitro is officially kicking off at 9 p.m. by building the unopposed hour as a pre-show for the next two. The opening took place at 8:55 with the announcers introducing the show, and Ric Flair's limousine arrived to the building for the crossover segment. Flair, Anderson and Robinson came out for Ric's title win follow-up promo. Flair said that tonight the wrestling business is starting all over again because he's officially the most powerful person in the industry as the world champion and permanent president of WCW, bringing out Bill Goldberg to the ring, saying that last week before the NWO jumped in the ring he had him begging for his life, challenging Flair to a title match tonight, bringing out Nash saying that he's the #1 contender instead. Nash told Flair that last night he robbed Hogan before telling Goldberg that he might have 200 wins but he's got one loss and he's looking at him. Hogan was the last one out, telling Flair that he had him bleeding and pinned in the cage, saying that he wants Flair and Nash wants Goldberg to set up a tag match, as Goldberg accepted, saying that he's gonna take all three out on the way to winning the belt back. With the hot big star power segment resembling Raw's usual opening promos led to a result not seen in months, as WCW, which ended the unopposed hour with a 5 rating, maintained the entire audience to start with its biggest viewership in months with a 5 first quarter rating. The San Jose arena erupted with Rock coming out to start Raw to a huge babyface reaction, continuing the way to the inevitable babyface turn with the crowd singing along throughout the entire promo. Rock hyped the WrestleMania main event in 13 days before turning to Paul White with them brawling last night on Heat after Austin hinted that they might be working together against the corporation, saying that Vince McMahon promised him answers and didn't deliver, calling him out to the ring with the crowd popping big for the Rock vs. McMahon confrontation. Vince responded saying that maybe this Rock stuff is getting to his head and maybe Dwayne needs a reality check after everything he has done for his family over 3 generations, telling him to remember everything his father did for Peter Maivia and everything he did for Rocky Johnson, saying that the WWF title belongs to him and he sees Rock like his son Shane, with Paul White only hired to protect the family, bringing him out to the ring with McMahon since last night, officially referring to him as the Big Show for the first time, as with both shows having big star power segments going neck and neck at the same time. Raw opened with a slight lead of 5.2 to 5 rating margin. With both shows unusually starting neck and neck in the first quarter, things returned to a more normal viewing pattern between 9:15 to 9:30, with WCW having Billy Kidman defending the Cruiserweight belt against Rey Mysterio in a 10-minute match with a commercial break in the middle, ending with Rey going over to win the belt with a top rope bulldog for the finish, with the quarter seeing a massive turnover of viewers after WCW successfully maintained its entire audience with the first segment in one of the only times in show history, as Raw's opening segment, which went over 22 minutes in total, picked up big for its conclusion along with Road Dogg vs. Val Venis IC title match with over 1.3 million viewers to a show-high 6.3 rating, while WCW dropped from a 5 to a 3.7. Seeing Vince telling White that he brought him in huge expense to do a job, before slapping him to lead to White almost taking him out and Vince booking the main event tag with Rock and White against Austin and Mankind. Promoted throughout as the biggest tag match in Raw history, with both shows now setting up mega tag matches between the top 4 performers in each company to go head-to-head in almost 2 hours. Both shows came in front of sold-out crowds in San Jose and Cincinnati, combining for over 27,000 people, with the WWF continuing to do its biggest house show business in history on the road with another 2 events during the week in Anaheim and Las Vegas, combining for over 26,000, making it over 60,000 people in attendance for the last 4 shows in the past 2 weeks, headlined by Rock and Kane vs. Austin and Mankind tag matches. In addition to that, the company sent out a press release on the booming business in every department, noting that he'd increased USA Network numbers by 77% compared to what previously aired on Sunday nights, along with ratings for secondary shows Livewire and Superstars reaching all-time heights, and the company website is viewed over 50 million times a month. Next on Nitro was Benoit and Malenko defending the tag belts against Morris and Barbarian to pick up over 400,000 viewers, while Raw had Shane McMahon in a WrestleMania warm-up match against Road Warriors Patterson and Briscoe, ending up with Shane going over before Undertaker and the Ministry showed up on the Titantron outside McMahon's house to start the angle for the next hour, with Taker waiting for Stephanie to arrive. Scott Steiner and Buff Bagwell were out next, with Steiner cutting a promo on Cincinnati before turning to Bagwell. Steiner told Bagwell that he cost him the match last night and is not the same since his neck injury, saying that he doesn't belong in the NWO anymore, with Buff responding saying that for the last 3 months he made Steiner look good in every appearance, but since he got back into shape Scott changed his tune and got a little jealous, as Steiner told him that he will always be second best standing next to him, ending up with Steiner turning on him with rumors of legit heat between them flying around, to end the almost year-long Steiner-Bagwell on-screen partnership that turned into one of the consistent viewership movers on the show for the majority of it, with this segment picking up over 600,000 viewers to a 4.4 rating. With the reformation of the NWO Elite angle now almost completely dropped, with Scott Hall and Lex Luger out with leg and arm injuries, Bagwell kicked out and Hogan turning face. While that was going on, Raw had the McMahons trying to call home with Taker waiting outside, and JR coming out with a surprise on the back of Noah and Jarrett vs Public Enemy tag match, with the company playing off the rumors of the heat on Public Enemy and the TV storyline coming off the infamous Acolytes match on March 7th. WCW opened its third hour having Horace vs Stevie Ray going 4 minutes after the reveal of Hogan telling every member of NWO Black and White that they're the leader of the group, while Raw had a loaded top of the hour quarter starting with the Bossman vs Mideon cage match, while the announcers continued to talk over each other, with JR sitting in front of Cole and inviting Lawler to join him on the A-Team. The cage match saw the corporation coming out to send a message to the Ministry if they don't get away from McMahon's house, with Taker responding that the Ministry are willing to be sacrificed, telling Vince to do what he has to do and Taker will soon do as well when his family come back home. The second half of the quarter saw a comedic skit with Jerry Lawler and Sable at the Playboy Mansion, and Sable coming out to promote the magazine on track to be the most selling of all time after being released last Monday, with the segments seeing Raw jump over 800,000 viewers to a joint show-high 6.3 rating. After being on a vacation in France in the last 2 weeks and handing the company creative keys to Nash Hogan Sullivan and Dusty Rhodes, Eric Bischoff returned from his break to revise the state of the company, with him only getting phone updates from several people while overseas. Eric, who was burned out from the last few years of running the company and the recent constant battles with Turner executives over their interference in the content of the TV product, handed more responsibility than ever before to the creative team headed by Nash to implement their ideas, with politics continuing to run the company with personal agendas clashing behind the scenes. With WCW having Conan vs Disco going 10 minutes, with Disco going over after Luger's interference, Raw had an hardcore title match with Billy Gunn going over Bob Holly to win the belt, coming an hour after Road Dogg won the IC title, with both Outlaws switching programs and winning the opposite titles. With the WWF turnaround coming along with the new Attitude marketing campaign, WCW planned a massive rebranding of the company to debut on April 5 from the MGM Grand in Las Vegas, with new TV sets and logos set to debut to refresh the look of the product, which was consistent since first going on the air in September '95, with the company planning one of the biggest shows of the year for the launch, while in addition to the presentation change, Randy Savage and Sting are expected to return on the night. Minutes before the big headline tag matches, WCW had a 13-minute Booker vs. Jericho TV title match, while Raw had Triple H coming to the ring to call out Kane, ending up with Kane taking out Hunter and in a big swerve revealing himself as Taker under the mask, telling McMahon that he can get him anytime, any place. WCW started to rebound big in the final quarter with the entrances and first half of the main event tag match, bumping the show over 800,000 viewers to a 4.1 rating, with the recent turns creating a unique dynamic in the match, with Flair transitioning into his heel role, Nash working as a tweeter while Hogan is transitioning to a babyface role with a more aggressive style in the ring, and Goldberg continuing his defined position as before as the top babyface in the company. The match saw Goldberg and Flair turning on each other while Hogan and Nash worked as team, with the crowd reactions changing throughout depending on who was in the ring, as Hogan was cheered over Flair while Goldberg was cheered against all three. Raw, going against the loaded WCW tag match, maintained its lead with a 5.4 rating for the first half of the match, going 12 minutes in front of a hot crowd, popping big throughout with the in-ring exchanges between Austin and Rock as the WrestleMania preview and the first interaction of Austin and Paul White in Big Show's official WWF debut. With the pay-per-view in less than 2 weeks already predicted by cable companies to break every industry record in history after the recent Rumble's huge number, the company announced a WrestleMania Rage Party TV special to air on the USA Network on the day before the event, promoting every top name in the company to be there as the final sell for the show. The Goldberg and Flair vs. Hogan and Nash tag match jumped huge in the overrun with an additional 1.5 million viewers to a 5.4 rating, gaining over 2.3 million viewers in total for the duration of the match to slightly overtake Raw's main event tag with a 5.3, making it the first WCW segment to beat Raw in almost 2 months since January 25, with the show overall while staying in the same range with a 4.3 rating, showing big interest in the main event angle, with both segments splitting the audience, with Raw almost equally to go over the 5 rating range, ending up with Hogan again having the match won, with Robinson refusing to count the fall, and Goldberg spearing Hogan to close the show. The Rock and Big Show vs. Austin and Mankind tag match ended with all 4 brawling at ringside, with both main events not giving the other any advantage by ending the match before the other, as both main events continued until the second each show went off the air, with the head-to-head mega tag matches in one of the biggest simultaneous display of star power in wrestling history, combining for a huge viewership peak of over 12.5 million viewers to end the broadcasts at 11:05 p.m. "6 days from WrestleMania with a huge show planned on Raw for the competition, WCW had its annual spring break edition of Nitro. With the subtle Ric Flair heel turn developing since the uncensored pay-per-view, the show was built on Flair defending the world title against a lottery pick opponent, along with Goldberg against Sandman and a Miss NWO contest. In a segment at the top of the hour, Flair initially told J.J. Dillon that he's taking the night off, but then changed his mind, telling Dylan to pick a random number and he's challenging anyone in the company, Goldberg to Hogan to Bret to the Outsiders, any match is possible. Before ending up telling Dylan to make sure there are only mid-carders and cruiserweights in the vote. On the final step of arguably the greatest road to WrestleMania of all time, the company promoted Raw on March 22 to be the biggest in history, hyping the main event of the first ever Steve Austin vs. Paul White match as the biggest match in show history, with major promotion all week on the USA Network to what was targeted to be a record-breaking night with momentum at a peak. The corporation opened Raw with the final hype to Mania, with Vince introducing The Rock and Shane, and saying that both will leave WrestleMania with the belts. Shane, who will make his in-ring debut in 6 days, challenged X-Pac to a Greenwich street fight for tonight, planning a surprise for him in the parking lot. Rock hyped the Mania main event with Vince announcing him to be the special referee for the Austin Giant match tonight, bringing out Foley, who challenged Rock for one more match between them, forcing him into the match with a signed contract from Shawn Michaels. Moments later, Steve Austin driving a beer truck entered the arena to a huge reaction, giving the final promo for the Mania main event before spraying the corporation with beer in one of the greatest segments of all time. With Raw already opening at near record levels with a 6.4 rating, the near 20-minute segment then grew to a 6.9. White interfered in the Rock-Mankind match, causing Rock to lose by DQ, putting Foley as the special referee in the main event for tonight, with Mankind and Big Show scheduled for a match at WrestleMania with the referee spot and the Rock-Austin match on the line. WCW peaked with a 4.1 for the Miss NWO segment, putting over Tori Wilson, along with the Goldberg vs. Hack match. The segment was usually done to pick Miss Nitro on the spring break shows, but this time Nash and Hogan brought a group of fitness models in a segment designed to put Wilson in the spotlight as WCW's answer to Sable, who was on the cover of the highest-selling Playboy magazine while also featured this week on a cover of TV Guide along with Rock, Austin and Foley. During this segment, Nash also took a shot at Sable, comparing her to Wilson. With rumors about a legit heat with Nash and several others, Bret Hart came to the ring for a promo with Mean Gene, indirectly addressing it and making several semi-shoot comments on Nash, Hogan and Goldberg. When asked about the dream match with Hogan that was supposed to be the main priority when signing with the company, Bret responded saying that he lost patience and don't think it will ever happen. Nash was next, as Bret said that Nash might be the pencil, but he can be the eraser, referring to Nash's role as a booker. The final one was Goldberg. Bret said that Goldberg never wrestled anyone on his level and he can beat him in 5 minutes. With Nitro coming from Toronto, Canada next week, a big Hart vs. Goldberg confrontation was set for the show. With the industry at all-time peak and seemingly breaking new milestones on a weekly basis, including on this night, every major channel and publication was covering the business and its success in some form. Perhaps the most high-profile piece was planned for March 30th with a 1-hour ESPN special, covering the working process of the industry and some of its dark habits. Every major performer from both companies was interviewed for the show, including Bischoff and McMahon. Vince made several media appearances during the week, talking about the adult content of the company's television product with so many kids watching. In this Raw show in particular, over 2.2 million viewers were under 18, and over 3.2 million between both shows. Vince responded saying that the more edgier content is usually past 10 p.m., and that's the parents' responsibility to take care of their children. McMahon also criticized the ESPN Outside the Lines program, with Jim Ross in another interview saying that it's a clueless asinine self-serving piece, noting that more people watch Raw every Monday night than practically any program on their network. Kane was scheduled for a match against Goldust. Moments before it, Goldust shot a fireball at Kane and was revealed to be Triple H in a well-executed angle. Bob Holly showed up at JR's frat party, starting a wild brawl with Steve Williams all over the house. Benoit and Malenko defended the tag belts against Raven and Saturn, which originally Flair booked as a handicap match against Raven before Saturn interfered. The promoted street fight saw Shane waiting for X-Pac in the parking lot in Albany. X-Pac showed to start the brawl before Shane's posse jumped him and drove off, getting more heat for the Shane vs. X-Pac match in 6 days. Undertaker and Bossman were scheduled to face off in a 6-man tag between the Ministry and the Corporation, ending in a brawl through the crowd before the Hell in a Cell. Steiner beat Jericho to advance in the U.S. title tournament, going against a record audience on Raw. With Flair's opponent originally supposed to be the injured El Dandy, Rey Mysterio took his number to get his first ever world title match in the main event. Rey, now with high-profile push after wins over several NWO members, specifically a clean win over Nash on February 22nd, was getting a main event spotlight against Ric Flair. Unlike last week when WCW put up a big main event tag match to counter the big star power tag on Raw, most of the top names already appeared on the show, going with a fresh combination of Flair versus Mysterio. The match went 7 minutes with Flair playing his classic heel role and Rey getting a lot of the showcase moves, including having the match won when Anderson took out the ref. Continuing the tradition of Spring Break with Rey kicking Flair over the barricade to take a bump into the pool to close the show. With the company going all out on the promoted biggest Raw in history, the decision was made to give away on television what was at one point targeted to be saved for a major pay-per-view with the first ever Austin vs. Big Show match. A record audience was on target with every major name out for the main event and the go-home segment for WrestleMania. Raw's last quarter for the Vince and Rock introduction, along with the entrances and first half of the Austin vs. Wyatt match, drew a record 7.1 rating, the highest rated quarter in Raw history, and only 0.1 below the all-time Monday Night Wars record of 7.2 for the Goldberg vs. Page Havoc match in October. The end of the match with Austin pinning Wyatt, along with the Rock Austin go-home brawl, drew an all-time record 7.7 overrun rating with around 8.7 million viewers, with Raw overall breaking its viewership record with a 6.4 rating. With the all-time great main event and all the programs built for months, peaking at the right time days before the show, WrestleMania by every metric is expected to set industry records in 6 days with the biggest pay-per-view of all time. A day after a record-setting WrestleMania with record viewership expected on Raw, WCW put on a big show with the first major event in Canada, in front of a hot crowd in Toronto at the sold-out Air Canada Centre. After weeks of a subtle Hogan-Flair double turn since the uncensored pay-per-view, the Canadian crowd ended all subtlety with Flair going full heel after being heavily booed in his President Power Trip World Champion character, and Hollywood Hogan going full babyface after getting a huge babyface reaction. Alongside Bret Hart, Toronto was Hulk Hogan territory for over 15 years at this point, with a strong reaction confirming that it still is. The ramifications of the double turn was that it shifted the focus from the big interest and momentum the company had post-January 4th with the reformation of the NWO going against top babyfaces Goldberg and Flair. The current situation is Steiner kicked Bagwell out of the group and was now an individual performer. Scott Hall was out due to injury and personal issues. Luger was out with injury and Hogan and Nash became a double solo act as the two most influential characters on the show on and off screen. The hot NWO Horseman program was over, and the biggest money feud of Goldberg running through the entire NWO until getting the belt back against top heel Hollywood Hogan was not going to happen, as the dynamic of the characters and programs in the last 3 months were changed before getting to the payoff. WCW hyped since the start of the broadcast that Sting was seen in Toronto, making his return since October '98. Raw opened huge with a 6.7 rating for the WrestleMania 15 follow-up, the highest-rated opening quarter in history. Steve Austin opened the show WWF champion since September '98, surprising the audience saying that he is relinquishing the belt, calling Vince to the ring to take it. Austin gave McMahon the belt but said that he is still champion, telling him that he has 2 hours to bring him his skull belt that he took at the Breakdown pay-per-view where he's coming after him. Ending the segment in a surprise with Vince hitting Austin with the belt. With the company coming off a milestone event after all the programs were built for months towards it, the challenge was to continue to build on the peaking momentum and interest. The company could have been on cruise control and ride the wave, but with the creative effort and motivation at all-time high, 30 minutes into the show, storylines were already taken to the next level to give viewers new points of interest in the feuds. The first one was the Ministry arriving and luring Vince out of his room by threatening Sable, abducting Stephanie in a show-long angle that would see another side of Vince, while at the same time a subtle new side of Shane who was planning to take control of the corporation, leading to Shamrock promising Vince to find her and searching all over the building throughout the show. Bret Hart made his televised return to Canada for the first time since November '97 to a tremendous ovation from the Toronto crowd, who were already chanting for Bret before entering the building and throughout the first 2 hours of the program. Bret sang the anthem, called out Flair and Hogan before turning to the hyped confrontation with Goldberg. Hart revealed a hockey jersey and said that Goldberg goes out challenging Steve Austin, when he beat Austin every time he ever fought him, to a huge pop from the crowd. Goldberg, the top babyface, was put in a difficult position by having to confront Bret in that environment, with reportedly high-profile names in the locker room advising against putting Goldberg in this angle in this city. Coming out and spearing Hart. After both were laying motionless, Bret got up revealing a steel plate, taking the microphone again telling Bischoff that he quits the company. Eric, who wasn't on TV for weeks, confronted Bret at the entranceway, with the two also arguing backstage in a worked shoot angle, ending a memorable segment that Bret called the best of his WCW run. After being directionless for some time, with this angle Bret seemed to put himself back in a top main event position. The angle got big mainstream coverage in Canada, with a lot of the media reporting it as a shoot of Bret quitting WCW with questions about his future. The story also played off rumors about legit heat between Hart and Booker Nash, with a plan of turning it into a program between them when Bret returns. The Brett promo and Goldberg confrontation gained over 1.2 million viewers over 2 quarters, peaking the night for WCW with a 3.8 rating. A day after being cheered as a heel at WrestleMania, Rock came out to the Continental Airlines Arena to the biggest pop of the night. With the crowd turning Rock babyface for some time, it was clear that a turn is only a matter of time now. The plan was to get another big Rock Austin pay-per-view scheduled for Backlash on April 25th, before the inevitable turn that will start the build to their WrestleMania rematch at next year's main event. Rock pinned Billy Gunn in front of a hot crowd with Shane on commentary. Mankind and Bossman were not on the show. Bossman a day after the hanging angle with Taker, and Mick Foley due to injury. Foley was scheduled to take time off due to knee injury but stayed to work the big WrestleMania pay-per-view. With him now appearing in advertising for the show, Foley is going to work Backlash before taking time off. Big Show, who turned on Vince last night telling him that nobody owns him, was now scheduled to start a dominant run as one of the top attractions in the company after big long-term investment with his signing on a 10-year deal. 2 title changes were happening on both shows. Goldust beat Road Dogg to win the IC title on Raw, going against Mysterio, and Kidman winning the tag belts against Benoit and Malenko after Raven's interference. Shamrock, after getting a bloodbath, attacking the Brood until Christian told him where Stephanie is, was running backstage covered in blood before eventually finding Stephanie in the basement of the building, going back to Vince's locker room. With Austin's belt also arriving in the parking lot, Vince told Shane that he doesn't want more problems tonight and told Shane to give Austin his belt. After Vince left home, Shane said that the night is not over, defying Vince and telling Shamrock to go get Rock, in the start of Shane's plan of taking over the group. Hogan against Dallas Page headlined the Strong Nitro, with Page returning being booed and turning heel on the crowd 2 hours earlier. Both worked hard, with Hogan working a more aggressive style since his teased face turn in the last few weeks, ending with Hogan hooking up on Flair to a huge reaction before pinning Page in 13 minutes. Part of the match saw Hogan and Page bringing down a classic Monday Night Raw entrance set along with the announcing position, with a new set and logo set to debut next week in Las Vegas as part of a rebranding campaign. After Triple H turned heel last night, joining the corporation and ending the original DX run, X-Pac, who returned to the company 1 year ago to start the run, called him out for the match ending with China and Kane interfering. After a commercial break, Shane was in the ring introducing Rock, coming out with the Smoking Skull belt. Rock talked about the match last night, saying that he kicked out of the Stunner and the story between them is not over. Austin sprinted to the ring starting an intense brawl, with Rock taking the belt after the corporation and Big Show ran in. Raw, even going against a big NCAA Finals, drew its highest rating in history with a 6.5 rating.